Time now, folks, for the Isuzu look ahead. In the next 4 days, we'll bring the first two meetings between a couple of legendary Tar Heels.
Towards the game, he's a very confident person, confident player, and has good fundamentals to his game. So I look forward to the challenge of seeing how he's adapted to the professional game. It's been said, a lot of things has been said from him about either I get favoritism from the fouls or, he can beat me in a one-on-one game or whatever. And I understand that as a challenge or a competitive standpoint. But I don't take it personally by no means. And I look forward to the challenge of facing Jerry. I think I'm pretty sure he has the same respect or the same response to looking forward to playing against me.
He can't beat you one-on-one, can he? No? Okay.
Oh, man, one look says it all. You don't tug on Superman's cape, baby.
Once upon a time, there was a confident 6'6" shooting guard from North Carolina. And no, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about Jerry Stackhouse. He was an athletic wing who could shoot from anywhere on the court. His efficiency wasn't usually great, as it would be fair to label him as a volume scorer. With that being said, Stackhouse is remembered as a guy who could heat up in a hurry, both in terms of his scoring and in terms of his temper. As a rookie in the 95-96 season, Stackhouse had a supreme belief in himself, and for good reason. He led all rookies in scoring that year as he averaged 19.2 points per game while finishing 4th overall in the Rookie of the Year voting. As in the case of many confident people, sometimes it crosses the line and enters the realm of arrogance, as you bite off more than you can chew. I think it's fair to say that this happened with Jerry Stackhouse, because in the summer of 1995, there was an annual basketball game where University of North Carolina players, both past and present, would compete against one another. The stats and highlights are not available for this private game, but as the story goes, Stackhouse and his team did quite well against Jordan and his, which gave Jerry an opportunity to start running his mouth to Jordan, the media, and basically whoever would listen. Allegedly, among the bold comments he made, Stackhouse said that he could beat Michael Jordan one-on-one, and that there was nobody in the NBA who could stop him one-on-one. Again, this was trash talk coming from a college player who was just in the process of making his debut into the NBA. Now, context is key in this situation, because there were specific reasons why Stack was so confident in himself, while being confident that he could best Michael Jordan. For one, Jerry was receiving some of the famous ongoing tags of the next Michael Jordan, which honestly was an easy and obvious comparison to make, as he was a scoring, athletic, and even bald 6'6" shooting guard out of North Carolina, who was taken with the 3rd overall pick in the NBA draft. Literally, every single one of those details matches Michael Jordan to a T. So with this in mind, it's no wonder why Stackhouse thought he was God's gift to basketball. Now on the other hand, Jordan's reputation was at its most vulnerable. The last time we saw him playing in the NBA was shortly after his comeback from baseball, and he had just been eliminated out of the playoffs by the Orlando Magic. And the lasting image of that series was Michael Jordan choking away Game 1, as he missed 2 clutch free throws, turned the ball over to Nick Anderson, which led to Orlando's game-winning dunk, and then threw the ball out of bounds on the Bulls' final possession. This culmination of events led to Nick Anderson of the Orlando Magic saying, quote, "45 is not number 23. I couldn't have done that to number 23. So already, the narrative was out there that Jordan had lost a significant step and was no longer the same guy. And that's when Stackhouse jumped on the bandwagon and said his piece. Now, as you saw in the beginning of this video, Michael Jordan was still very confident as well.
To looking forward to playing against me.
He can't beat you one-on-one, can he? No? Okay.
Now, the interesting thing about this clip is that this interview took place the day before Michael Jordan and Jerry Stackhouse would square off for the first time as pros. Heading into this contest, the narratives were starting to shift, as the Chicago Bulls had a 29-3 start, as they were on pace to have the greatest regular season in NBA history, while the Philadelphia 76ers had started the year with an abysmal 7-25 record, which was the worst in the entire league. So at this point, the writing was on the wall, as people not only expected the Bulls to win, but they expected Michael Jordan to get his revenge in the process. I still think everyone was stunned by the extent that Jordan would execute his revenge. From the very start of the game, it was very clear that MJ was feeling it, as his jump shooting was on point. Simultaneously, Jordan was making Stackhouse extremely uncomfortable, as he was harassing him defensively. On one of the first possessions of the game, Stackhouse drove to the basket and was completely out of control, leading to a traveling violation. On the other end, Jordan continued his onslaught, hitting impressive shot after impressive shot. What was the most fascinating about Jordan's scoring explosion was the fact that he was doing almost all of it from the perimeter, as he was an efficient sniper on this night. The young rookie was forcing the issue, while the championship veteran looked completely poised and graceful on the other end. In the third quarter specifically, Jordan took over the game and ran away with it, as the Bulls outscored the 76ers 44-21 in the third quarter alone. The game evolved into such a blowout that MJ only had to play 34 minutes of action. In only 3 quarters, Michael dropped 48 points and 10 rebounds, while being 5 of 7 from three-point range and 64% from the field overall. Meanwhile, Jerry Stackhouse finished with 13 points on 36% shooting, as the Bulls stomped the inferior 76ers with a final score of 120-93. Now you would think that the story would end here, but Jordan continued to brutally destroy Stackhouse and the 76ers for the rest of the year. They would play against each other again just 3 nights later. This time, Stackhouse was ready to compete, as he dropped 24 points on 52% shooting from the field. But as expected, Jordan once again got the last laugh, as he poured in 32 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 steals on 59% shooting from the field and in only 32 minutes of action, which was even less playing time than his last performance against Stackhouse. MJ felt so good about himself that he even attempted an eyes shut free throw, but he did clank this one off the iron. Ultimately, the Bulls won this game comfortably as well, with a final score of 116-104. Michael and Jerry would only play against each other one other time that season, and it was 2 months later, on March 18, 1996. MJ would be shorthanded on this night, as both Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman sat out with minor injuries. As a result, Michael had to play 47 of the 48 minutes in a much more competitive contest, but ultimately he was still too much, as he dropped 38 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists, while hitting 47% of his shots. Stackhouse scored 31 points of his own, but MJ made him work for it, as he was 8 of 21 from the field and only 1 of 8 from three-point range. Yet again, the Bulls won with a final score of 98-94. And for the third time in one season, Jerry Stackhouse was reminded why you shouldn't in fact tug on Superman's cape.
Amongst basketball fans, it's common knowledge that Michael Jordan was the ultimate competitor and always looked for some kind of angle to motivate himself to become better than his opponent. It was basically the theme of his career, to such a point that it became a meme after the world witnessed the Last Dance documentary. Despite all of this, I've never seen a video about the first instance in the NBA where Jordan took something from a competitor personally. That's where this video comes in, as we evaluate the revenge game of a rookie who was still yet to make his mark on the sports world. It's the night of November 1st, 1984, and the Bulls are in Denver, Colorado for an early season matchup with the contending Denver Nuggets. The young Michael Jordan only had 4 regular season games under his belt at this point, and after those first 4, he was averaging about 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists on 46% shooting. He definitely hadn't yet become the icon that we know today, but with these first 4 games, people could tell that he was definitely an elite talent and a rising star in this league that defenses had to take note of. On this night, the player who had the assignment of guarding Jordan was the 6'4" shooting guard Theodore Roosevelt Dunn. more commonly referred to as T.R. Dunn. The veteran Dunn was one of the best defensive players in the entire league at this point, as he had made the NBA's All-Defense team in the previous 2 seasons, and he would go on to earn a selection this year as well. Both Jordan and Dunn were looking forward to that night's solo battle, as one of the best scoring guards was facing one of the best perimeter defenders. Once the game began, Jordan had his moments with some of the incredibly athletic moves that you would expect from a young Michael Jordan. But what some may find surprising is that Dunn actually got the last laugh, as he contained Jordan well below his average, as MJ had one of his worst games of the year, scoring only 17 points on 17 of 15 from the field. He didn't look like the best player on the court that night, as 5 other players outscored him, and as a result, the Bulls were handily defeated with a final score of 129 to 113. This embarrassing loss stuck with MJ, and according to former Bulls assistant coach Fred Carter, Jordan never forgot about this game where he was contained by T.R. Dunn. Since it was an out-of-conference matchup, the Bulls and Nuggets would only play each other twice this season, and the second matchup wouldn't come until a couple months later. On January 14, 1985, the Bulls and Nuggets were set to square off again, this time in Chicago Stadium. For T.R. Dunn, it was just another night of being assigned to guard one of the premier scorers of the league. But for Michael Jordan, this was the game he had circled on his calendar for the last couple of months, and had been on his mind throughout. Unfortunately, this was one of those legendary games that we have absolutely no footage of, which is actually pretty common for Michael Jordan's early career. This probably has a lot to do with why no one ever talks about this game. Regardless, we still know how this evening went for both Jordan and Dunn. This game was close at the end of the first half, but in the third quarter, Jordan rolled his ankle and was dealing with a significant amount of pain. The Bulls coaching staff tried to convince Jordan to sit out the rest of the game, but according to the assistant coach Fred Carter, Jordan kept saying, "I gotta play, I gotta play," as his mind was focused on earning the victory and getting his revenge on T.R. Dunn. Apparently, the ankle injury was so bad that Carter even went as far as saying that no one else would have been able to play through it. But a young and fiercely competitive Michael Jordan was not so easily deterred. Not only did Jordan continue to play through the pain, but he completely erupted in the fourth quarter, ultimately leading his Bulls to a 122 to 113 victory. Jordan finished with 35 points, 15 assists, 14 rebounds, and 3 steals on 68.8% shooting. He led all players in points, assists, and rebounds. Not only was this Jordan's first revenge game that we know of, but it was also the very first triple-double of his career, which is something that he would do quite a few times afterwards. Assistant coach Fred Carter said that the message to T.R. Dunn was sent and received, as Jordan vanquished his first victim of his extremely vindictive career. It's a short and sweet video, but I thought it would be cool to cover one of the rarely discussed moments of Michael Jordan's career, while also giving some attention to one of the great forgotten defenders of NBA history.
Michael Jeffrey Jordan. In the eyes of most people, he's the greatest basketball player who's ever lived. And then there's the Portland Trail Blazers, one of the most cursed and unfortunate franchises of league history. If you're a hardcore basketball fan, then you probably know where I'm going with this. But if you're not, then you're probably thinking, what in the world do these two things have to do with one another? Well, I'll explain that in detail, but first, let's travel back in time all the way back to 1984, where we pick up our story. It's early June of 1984. Michael Jackson is sitting atop of the music charts. Ghostbusters is dominating the domestic box office, and Larry Bird and the Boston Celtics are preparing their title defense. It seemed as if it was just another regular week in the United States, but especially in the world of basketball, something significant was about to happen that would shift the course of the future for the sport. In New York, on the night of June 19th, NBA general managers were preparing for the NBA draft. Many highly anticipated prospects would be selected on this evening. The Houston Rockets had the first overall pick, but the selection was hardly in question, as basically everyone was anticipating the selection of the Nigerian 7-footer Akeem Olajuwon. But after that is where things were expected to get really interesting. The Portland Trail Blazers were slated to select the second overall pick, while the Chicago Bulls were in line to pick third. Available for Portland to select was the dynamic 6'6" shooting guard out of North Carolina, Michael Jordan, who was the ACC Player of the Year and the consensus National Player of the Year. Also available on the draft board was the 7' 1" center Sam Bowie from the University of Kentucky. Now, Michael Jordan was certainly the more proven collegiate star, as his list of accolades far exceeded the Kentucky big man. But Bowie was a hyped prospect in his own right, as he was also an All-American and appeared to be ready for the NBA spotlight. With Olajuwon being the obvious first choice, all of the attention was on the Portland organization, as the basketball world waited intently to find out their conclusion. Now, the Blazers did like the looks of Jordan, but they felt like they had to consider their own roster. And the thing is, just 1 year earlier, they had a solid first-round draft pick, and used that pick to take the young 6'7" shooting guard Clyde the Glide Drexler. Drexler had a very modest rookie season, as he only averaged a mere 7 points per game in his debut year. But the Blazers were confident that Drexler would turn into a star shooting guard in his own right. Then, the Portland management had to consider the state of the NBA at the time. The common belief among basketball minds of that era is that in order to build a championship dynasty, you need an all-time great big man to build around. Throughout most of NBA history leading up to the 1984 draft, this appeared to be the case. In the 1950s, the 6'10" George Mikan led his Lakers to win numerous championships. In the 60s, the 6'10" Bill Russell and the 7'1" Wilt Chamberlain did basically all of the winning in that decade. And then, in recent history, the Lakers were winning championships with the 7'2" Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the paint, and the Boston Celtics had won championships with their twin tower tandem of Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish. Conventional wisdom of the time was telling the Blazers management that they needed a big man in order to succeed, and some of that belief even came from their own personal experience. You see, at the time, Jack Ramsey was the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, and just 7 years earlier, Ramsey won the NBA championship with a big man under his leadership, which was the all-time great center, Bill Walton. And now, with Walton long gone from the Portland roster, Ramsey was intrigued by the idea of recreating that championship roster, but with Sam Bowie in the paint instead. Leading up to the draft, Ramsey was asked about the possibility of them taking the sensational Michael Jordan with the second pick. And this is what the Portland coach had to say. "We haven't made a decision, but it is likely that we will take someone else. That isn't to say that we don't like Michael Jordan. You won't find anybody saying that. It's just that we more desperately need a center." Fast forward a bit, and now the Blazers are on the clock. And as expected, they selected based on position instead of talent, and acquired Sam Bowie with the second pick overall. And that meant that the young phenom, Michael Jordan, fell right on the lap of the Chicago Bulls, as they selected him with the third overall pick. At this point, there was nothing left to contemplate. The course of the future had now been set in stone, and all the basketball community had to do was just watch and see how it all played out. Less than 2 months later, the 1984 Olympic Games were taking place in Los Angeles, California, and leading Team USA was the newly acquired shooting guard of the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan. With other former collegiate stars on the roster like Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullin, and Alvin Robertson, Jordan led the country to an undefeated record and an Olympic gold medal, while being easily the team's leading scorer throughout the games. You've got to wonder at this point, did the Blazers organization knew they blew it? Possibly, but they still had to see how things panned out in the actual NBA for both Bowie and Jordan. 2 months after the Olympics took place, the NBA regular season was set to begin. The Blazers opener was against the Kansas City Kings, and the Bulls opener was against the Washington Bullets. In Bowie's debut game, he scored just 4 points on a 1 of 5 shooting in 23 minutes of action, while Jordan's debut game resulted in 16 points on 5 of 16 shooting in 40 minutes of action. At this point, it was still too early to draw any massive conclusions, but from this point on, things were not getting any better for Bowie.
About 3 weeks later, Michael Jordan scored his first 40-point game of his career against the San Antonio Spurs, as MJ dropped 45 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks on 67% shooting. On that same evening against the Dallas Mavericks, Sam Bowie had 0 points on 0 of 1 shooting in 20 minutes of action. By Thanksgiving week, Sam Bowie didn't have a single game where he scored more than 16 points, while Michael Jordan didn't have a single game where he scored less than 16 points. Even as a rookie, MJ was already establishing himself as one of the best players in the entire league, while Bowie couldn't seem to get anything going. Now at this point, do you think the Blazers were regretting their draft selection? Almost certainly, but at the very least, they still hadn't seen Michael Jordan perform in the NBA with their own eyes. Up to this point, they hadn't seen their top pick go up against the Bulls' top pick in a regular season matchup. But all of that would change on November 24th, 1984, as the Bulls were taking on the Blazers in Portland for the first time that season. Both teams were in the playoff picture, each with an 8-6 record, but at this point in the season, the most exciting aspect of the game was seeing how the two rookies performed against each other so shortly after the draft. Right out of the gates, the game was a high-scoring affair, as both teams were shooting the lights out. But one of the players who especially had his skills on display was Michael Jordan. I honestly don't know if Michael marked his calendar for this matchup because he took personal offense to Portland picking Sam Bowie instead of him. But it certainly appeared that way, as MJ was extremely aggressive on both ends of the court. One of his incredible finishes was so remarkable that it looked like something only a prime Julius Erving could have pulled off. Over the course of the night, Jordan displayed all of his hang time and his mid-range artistry, leaving the Portland crowd dumbfounded at what could have been theirs. By the end of the night, the Blazers' collective firepower overcame Jordan's talent, as they ultimately won the game with a final score of 141-131. Sam Bowie didn't necessarily have a bad game, as he put up 11 points and 6 rebounds on 5 of 7 shooting. On the other hand, Jordan looked like the all-around superstar that he was, as he dropped 30 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals on 10 of 24 shooting. At this point, the writing was on the wall, and the Blazers could no longer hide from the truth. They blew it, and they knew it. They had heard about Jordan dominating the game on a global level. They knew he had taken the league by storm and was putting up insane numbers in only his first few weeks in the league. And now, they had seen him outplay their top draft selection with their own eyes, right in front of their disappointed home crowd. Although I don't think Sam Bowie was a bad player overall, people eventually viewed him as a massive bust due to his potential being ruined by career-crippling injuries. On the other hand, Michael Jordan simply went on to be the greatest icon in basketball history. Talk about a missed opportunity. It's June of 1992, and the defending champion Chicago Bulls are coming off of a tough Eastern Conference Finals where they defeated the Cleveland Cavaliers in 6 games. Meanwhile, the Portland Trail Blazers had just defeated the Utah Jazz in 6 games as well, sending themselves to the NBA Finals for the second time in 3 seasons. This all set up a colossal showdown between the two best teams throughout the year, who were led by the top 2 players in that season's MVP race, Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler. They played the same position, they were similar in stature, similar in athletic ability, were almost the same age, and were both the leader of their teams. So naturally, amidst the hype of these NBA Finals, these two superstars were being compared to one another constantly among the fans and amongst the media. Maybe the biggest talking point that was consistently being repeated was that Clyde Drexler was just like Michael Jordan, except that Clyde was the better three-point shooter. Needless to say that this is the kind of narrative that Michael Jordan has been known to take personally. But whether or not MJ liked it, there was certainly some merit to it. Throughout the regular season, Drexler shot 338 three-pointers and made 33.7% of his attempts. Jordan, on the other hand, shot less than a third of that, attempting only 100 three-pointers throughout the season, and he made just 27% of those attempts. Anyone who considered Drexler as the better perimeter shooter were completely justified, but Jordan thought otherwise. On the eve of Game 1 of the NBA Finals, Jordan was being interviewed and was asked about the comparison between him and Drexler in terms of three-point shooting. Jordan went on to say that three-point shooting isn't a part of his game that he focuses on, and said that he would be a much better three-point shooter if he focused on it more. And then, as a direct quote, was the bombshell statement, "Clyde is a better three-point shooter than I choose to be." This was a spicy quote for sure, but as far as we could tell, that seemed to be the end of it, and we assumed both players would bring the skills we've come to expect from them. Well, now it's game day.
This is the NBA on NBC. The 1992 NBA Finals. Tonight, Game 1 between the Portland Trail Blazers and the Chicago Bulls.
The Windy City crowd was absolutely electric, but even they had no idea what they were about to witness. The game begins with Jordan looking to be somewhat of a distributor and play within the flow of the offense. Clyde also appears to be having a strong start of his own, looking to justify the comparisons between the two superstars. But soon after is when we notice something different. Jordan's first shot attempt is a three-pointer. It's off, and the game goes on. Shortly after, Jordan begins to find his stride offensively. But a couple plays later, he once again attempts a three-pointer right in Drexler's face. Given that it wasn't within rhythm and that it was his second attempt in such a short amount of time, it seemed pretty clear that the three-point comparison was something that was still in the back of Jordan's mind. Halfway through the first quarter now, and MJ once again lets it fly.
The field. Jordan again from three-point land. Most unusual to see Michael bombing away. That's his third three-point attempt.
At this point, Jordan begins to catch fire, hitting an array of jumpers, as the Bulls begin to seize the momentum. A couple minutes later, MJ hits his second three off of Scotty's pass, and his third three shortly after that. He closes out the first quarter completely on fire and making the game look easy, finishing with 18 of the Bulls' 33 first quarter points. With momentum in the Bulls' favor, Jordan took an extensive rest and didn't return until it was halfway through the second quarter. But 6 minutes is all Jordan would need to make history. MJ immediately continues his abuse of Drexler, scoring on him in the post. Moments later, Clyde tries to take back some momentum with a three-pointer, but to no avail. Bulls rebound, and Jordan goes on to return the favor by draining a three of his own. It seemed very personal at this point. With that fourth three-pointer from MJ, he tied the NBA record for the most three-pointers ever made in one half of an NBA Finals game. The Blazers called a timeout, but a simple stop in action wasn't going to cool off the best player in the world, and as soon as play continued, he resumed his dominance. He then made his fifth three-pointer, again directly in front of Drexler, securing the record as his own for the most made threes in a finals half. You could see the shock in the faces of the Portland Trail Blazers. This was a guy who made only 27 three-pointers over the course of an 82-game regular season, and now they're witnessing him breaking three-point records on the game's biggest stage. If Jordan hadn't completely made his point yet to Clyde and the rest of the world about the three-point shooting comparison, then this next sequence surely sealed it.
The steal by Pippen. Drexler for three, air ball. Here's Jordan for three, yes! Did you see that look? Michael indicating he can't believe it.
With his sixth three-pointer, he had now tied the NBA record for the most threes in an NBA Finals game, and it only took him one half. With that iconic shot, he also scored his 35th point, which is still an NBA record to this day for the most points ever scored in a half of an NBA Finals game. Pretty incredible stuff when you consider the fact that he didn't even play in 6 minutes of the first half. The Bulls had a commanding lead at the end of the first half, and with the lead reaching nearly 30 points early into the third quarter, Jordan and the Bulls simply cruised from that point on, as he finished the game with 39 points and a 122-89 victory. Marv Albert said Jordan's shrug meant he couldn't believe what he just did. Magic Johnson has his own explanation as to what Jordan meant to say with his famous shrug, and it may or may not be accurate. But for me, given the full context of the comparisons with Clyde Drexler, The chatter about his three-point shooting, the statement by Jordan the day before, and the fact that he just broke the three-point record immediately after Drexler's airball, I always personally interpreted it as Jordan's way of saying, "I tried to tell you." The Last Dance was incredible to watch, but I was kinda disappointed during this bit of the documentary, as I felt like they left out some key details of this incredibly iconic performance. Hopefully this video helped elaborate upon it. This game alone is enough for me to tell people not so fast when they act like Jordan couldn't thrive in this modern three-point shooting era. How do you think Jordan would do in the modern era of the long ball? And was this game the greatest hold my beer moment in NBA history?
One of my favorite MJ story is, since this is out there, we're in Chicago. You know, it's my rookie year, the second half of the year. You know how you're not caught on now, right? Now you got your little 1-2 moves, you getting them off right now. You got some confidence, right? So I'm in that. So I'm in the wave, I'm playing decent, I'm starting whatever, however. We get to Chicago, Ronnie was just in the bad crash. I haven't had no sleep, so I'm on a getting back to the go. I got about 70 people at the game, the hood in here, we all in here, right? So I'm just on one, but I haven't had no sleep. I'm just on like a, you know, I come in here, man, and it was hard seeing my partner in the bed like that. He had a big ass halo around his neck, but he was such in good spirits, man. Phil, shout to Ronnie Fields.
He still was dunking with that shit on too.
Listen, bro, he was dunking that motherfucker, doing the same dunks with the halo on his head, which is crazy. Anyway, I'm playing, right? But JR is having a good game. You know, JR Mike.
JR Ryder.
Like JR Ryder. Shout to JR Ryder, right?
Easy Ryder.
So I'm like, so as we come out the timeout, just I'm on, y'all. I can't even explain it. I was just like, keep killing that nigga, yo. Killing that nigga. Boning him, yo, straight up. You having a good game, Joe. Keep going. But it was on some like just fly by, like he was like, yeah, you too. So as I'm walking off, the nigga right here, Mike can hear me, but I don't really give a f. I'm like, so I double back like, yeah, man, you keep killing that nigga, yo. You killing that motherfucker. So as I say that, I feel it. Hands on hips, legs locked.
Then look.
The nigga stabbed me for about 15 seconds.
You feel that?
So I start to feel it. There's two ways you can go in this. I can walk this off out like I don't even feel it and play it off and dummy out. Fuck that. Now I'm in here, I got so I'm on. Keep killing this nigga. Okay, keep it up. So I hear JR go, yo, all right, yo, fella, keep going, yeah, you too. So he's trying to get me off and over. I don't even, you know, now that I recall it, he was trying to kind of just get off and over. So he go, so I double back, go, and get ready to say something. So he go, hey, look, Mike, he don't really know how I see him and Mike having a conversation. So he's like, he don't really know, he excited, whatever. So now MJ on the back leg joint, you know.
Leaning on you.
Like,
is that right?
Okay, yeah, huh? I can't even really describe the next like 6 to 7 minutes of play, y'all. In this next 6 to 7 minutes of play, y'all, we get two 10-second calls. You know, when you bring the ball up, you gotta get across half court. 2 10-second calls. We down 25 now. It was just at 2. Mike had 18. He had like 40 now. JR, myself, we ain't scored in like about 4 minutes. Then I subbed like 3 of the starters. Like it's just finally flipped. It got bad quick, yo. I come to the joint and they know this. When you come and you've been on the run, when you not got back on the floor, got back, had to rebound, and you feel like you on defense all the time, you come to the bench like this. So I was like, JR, man, my bad, dog. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. He like, it's cool, man. I told you, just shut your ass up, man. You're not fucking. So you got in between the Gatorade there where you like, damn, and next thing you know, we over there like this. That's it. And Mike came down. Okay, young fella. Okay, damn, young fella. Damn, y'all done? Damn, young fella. Never talk to Mike ever again in life.
Heading into this matchup, no one expected this to be a close competition, as the Bulls had the best record in the league at 49-6, while the Timberwolves had the second worst record in the Western Conference at 16-37. When the game started, it looked like it was going to be another routine victory for Chicago, as the Bulls burst out of the gates to an 11-2 lead. To their credit, the rookie Garnett and the third-year player Isaiah Ryder didn't seem too rattled by the moment. After the initial run, the Bulls appeared as if they were in a somewhat relaxed state, and as a result, Ryder and Garnett started going to work, slowly closing the gap. KG didn't look like a rookie, but rather, he appeared as if he was in his prime form, as he had 16 points by the end of the first half. Thanks to this incredibly difficult running three by Tony Kukoc, the Bulls only had a 3-point lead heading into the start of the third quarter. Throughout the third, it was Ryder who was putting on a show for Minnesota, as he was scoring in a variety of ways and was consistently beating the Bulls defenders off the dribble. At this point, there's roughly a minute and a half in the third quarter, and this is where I believe the initial moment took place, where KG pissed off Jordan. Remember, when Garnett was telling his story, he did say that it was a 2-point game before Jordan's onslaught, and that's exactly what it was at this moment, as the Bulls led 74-72 heading into the timeout. As you can see from the footage, as they're heading to the sidelines, KG grabs Ryder from behind and starts enthusiastically telling him things into his ear as they pass by Michael Jordan. I believe this is what Garnett was talking about, and my claim is immediately supported by the fact that Jordan came out of the timeout looking like a man possessed. Jordan looked so determined, as if passing the ball wasn't even a thought that he considered. The extremely aggressive MJ scored 8 points in the final minute and 30 seconds of the third quarter. Now, to KG's credit, the one thing he seems to be forgetting is that he actually played pretty well after this moment, continuing to have an impact both offensively and defensively, despite MJ's wrath being in full force. In the fourth quarter, MJ continued his dominance, as you could tell that his energy shifted, as he seemed like he had his mind completely set on scoring on each of these plays. After this difficult fading jumper over Ryder, Jordan had extended the Bulls' lead to 16, and even the commentator was stunned by the surge as he said,
"I didn't think he was going to get 20 tonight. He's got 33.
Just a couple plays later, to add insult to injury, MJ hit this ridiculous backwards layup, displaying the kind of night he was having. Garnett was actually the one who had the last highlight-worthy play of the night, as he converted this thunderous slam. But at that point, the damage was done, and the Bulls enjoyed their sudden blowout victory with a final score of 120-99. With this victory, the Bulls became the fastest team to ever reach 50 wins in an NBA season. On the night, Garnett had 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 steals on 10 of 16 shooting, while Isaiah Ryder had 20 points, 3 assists, and 3 rebounds on 9 of 17 shooting. But as the story goes, the night belonged to MJ, who put up 35 points, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds on 11 of 24 shooting. One of the major things I learned by exploring this game is that not only is Garnett a fantastic storyteller, but he's also an extremely accurate storyteller, with a very impressive memory, as he basically described the details of the event with amazing precision.
Your best Michael Jordan story.
Michael Jordan story. In every game that I went in playing against MJ, first of all, I was like, man, I'm happy it's just twice a year. You know, he ain't in the West Coast, I'm happy it's twice a year. And it wasn't I was scared, it was just like, I know this dude's a killer. I said, but I gotta go out here and show up. And it was games where I guarded him, he was 6 for 26. And then there was games, the most he scored on me was 39. But it would take him 30 shots to get it, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make it hard on you.
That's a hard 39.
I'm gonna make it hard as hell.
Yeah, it's not an easy.
You're gonna respect, I respect you, but you're gonna have to work for this. Right. So it's funny because we played against him in the Forum, and it was my 10th year in the league. So it was my last year with the Lakers at that time. We had drafted a guy, Anthony Peeler.
You guys remember Anthony Peeler?
Lefty, exactly. So I hurt my ankle.
Chicago Bulls coming in town, and unfortunately, I got a sprained ankle.
So the trainer's like, I don't know if you're gonna be able to play tonight. And I was like, well, we'll see, let's just wait till game time. So Chicago's bus is coming down the Forum, and I'm walking out, MJ gets off.
MJ says, B. Scott, what's going on? I said, what's up, MJ? He said, man, I hear that you're not playing tonight. I said, no, I sprained my ankle. He said, who's guarding me? I said, Anthony Peeler. He said, oh, 50.
The rookie? Shit, 50. Swear to God. Hey.
So I told Anthony Peeler, listen, MJ, he's probably going to go for about 50 tonight on you. So just...
I go home, I come back to the game, got my suit on. You know, the players go out to warm up, and then Anthony's coming towards the bench, and I say, Anthony, listen. He said he's going for 50 tonight, so what you don't want to do is piss him off.
Right. I enjoy guarding Mike because he was, you know, the one thing I did with Mike is I never got him pissed off. You know,
yeah. I said, this is how you guard MJ. I said, don't be all physical and trying to body him because he's going to go around you, man.
Yeah.
I said, back up, give him space, dare him to shoot jump shots, challenge him. He make them.
Right.
He make a shot, you say, good shot, Mike. You know, you don't talk trash to him so he can go off for 60. You know, you try to kill him with kindness. You don't try to talk trash to him.
I got him. Okay. Every time MJ scored, he looked at me on the bench.
Told you.
54.
No, just be cool. He ended up with 54. So the man could do basically whatever he wanted to do on that basketball court.
It occurred on November 20th, 1992, between the 7-1 Chicago Bulls and the 3-3 Los Angeles Lakers. Now, what you need to understand is that Michael Jordan was at his absolute peak of his abilities and at his peak of his intimidating reputation. At this point, Jordan had just won the last 2 NBA championships. He had just won the last 2 Finals MVPs. He had won the last 2 scoring titles. He had won the last 2 league MVPs. And he was fresh off of leading the men's USA team to an Olympic gold medal. Based on the fact that Jordan had such a strong start to this season, they appeared to be on their way to their 3rd straight championship. To sum it all up, Jordan was winning basically everything in the game of basketball, and everyone was wishing that they were like Mike. So when a fully confident, fully prime, and fully revered Jordan says that he's gonna drop 50 on an NBA rookie, you tend to believe him. Now Scott was in fact out of the game with a sprained ankle, but to say that a 22-year-old rookie Anthony Peeler had the lone assignment of guarding Michael Jordan was a bit misleading. In reality, it was a rotation of 3 guards who had that responsibility. The first was the 6'3" Tony Smith. The second was the 6'2" Sedale Threatt, and of course the 6'4" Anthony Peeler. The thing is, Peeler wasn't even one of the starting guards for this game, as Smith and Threatt got those honors. Tony Smith was the one who had the first crack at MJ, and Jordan quickly went to work, burying his first jumper just inside of the 3-point line. Now this story is famous for the angle that MJ dominated the contest with his scoring. But that would be selling it short, as MJ was doing just about everything on the court, from the facilitating to the rebounding, and he was even the top shot blocker for both teams. Despite MJ's all-around onslaught, Los Angeles was still executing pretty well when they had the ball, and due to this, the game was remaining extremely close. The rookie Peeler didn't get his first shot at guarding MJ until the final few minutes of the first. And at that point, Jordan's aggression to score the ball became even more intense. After his second made jump shot over Peeler, legendary commentator Hubie Brown mentioned how Jordan was talking trash to the Lakers bench, which was presumably towards Byron Scott.
Not only that, but he's talking to the guys on the sideline. Okay, so
after the Lakers coaching staff realized that the Peeler situation was actually fueling Jordan's wrath, they then put the 6'9" power forward AC Green on Michael to see if he would fare any better, but MJ was obviously torching him as well. By the end of the first half, Jordan had scored baskets while being defended by Tony Smith, Sedale Threatt, Anthony Peeler, AC Green, and Sam Perkins. Essentially, nearly everyone had their shot at MJ, and they all got burned. Despite all of that, the Bulls only had a 3-point lead at halftime. Throughout the third quarter, MJ just kept abusing the starting defender, Tony Smith. It wasn't until the final 2.5 minutes of the third that Peeler would get another shot. Inevitably, this was yet another mistake by Los Angeles. A determined Jordan scored 8 points in the final 2.5 minutes of the third. And after the last field goal, the commentators yet again mentioned how MJ was chirping at the sidelines.
trying to get a little motion in their offense. 33 seconds left in the quarter. Michael Jordan just glanced over at our table like, I'm even impressed with the way I'm playing. He has 40.
With only seconds left in the third, MJ had a chance to really get an exclamation point on Peeler, as he got the ball on a breakaway, yet somehow fumbled the rock out of bounds, showing that he is in fact human. At the end of the third, Jordan had 40 points, and the Lakers coaching staff had seen enough, as Jordan was no longer Peeler's defensive assignment. Fast forward deep into the fourth quarter, and the game is extremely close, thanks to massive performances from the Lakers' Sam Perkins and James Worthy. There's now just moments left to go in the fourth quarter, and the Bulls are down by a basket. With the ball in Michael's hands, MJ shoots a long two, which he misses, but Scottie Pippen clutchly secured the rebound and tied the game with his own jumper, which sent the game to overtime. We now fast forward to the final moments of OT, and Michael finds himself in the same situation. They're down 2 points with just seconds remaining, and they desperately need a basket. This time, MJ delivers as he drove to the baseline and hit an insanely tough fadeaway over the outstretched arm of the 6'11" Eldon Campbell. With just over 5 seconds left in the contest, it was the Lakers' turn, and thanks to a perfectly executed play off of the inbounds pass, Vlade Divac was heading to the line with 2 seconds left. He buried both free throws, putting Los Angeles up by 2. Once again, the fate of the game was in Jordan's hands. He catches the inbounds pass and launches a good look at a game-winning three, but it was just long, and the Lakers won the game instead, 120-118. At the end of the contest, Jordan had a monstrous stat line of 54 points, 13 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 blocks on nearly 54% shooting. Although the rookie Anthony Peeler gets the short end of the stick on this story, he was actually only guarding MJ during 6 of his 21 field goals made. So maybe that's not really fair to him. Other than that, Scott was pretty spot on with the details of the event. Maybe the initial plan was to have Peeler guard Jordan more, but again, every time MJ started heating up against Peeler and started talking to the Lakers bench, they were quick to put someone else on him instead, which to me is the most fascinating part out of all of this, and really tells you the level of intimidation that Jordan had over the competition at that time. The year is 1991. Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers are making their trip to the NBA Finals once again, where they'll be meeting Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls. Magic was coming off of a decade that he essentially owned. He had won 5 championships in the 80s, and he was making an incredible 9th trip to the NBA Finals. Magic was also only 1 year removed from being a back-to-back MVP winner, and he was already the all-time leader in assists. He was a giver who was seen as the definition of a leader who makes his teammates better. If there was one player in the NBA at that time that you would describe as the face of the league, it would probably be Magic Johnson. Now, Michael Jordan was in a much different position. In our modern day of the year 2020, we see MJ as the greatest player of all time, and we know him as a 6-time NBA champion and a perennial winner who did whatever it took to reach the mountaintop. That's our perception of MJ today, but halfway through the 1991 season, the perception of him was quite different. Michael was in his 7th season in the league. He had already won 2 MVP awards, won 5 straight scoring titles, and had set numerous NBA records, but he was still yet to win his first NBA championship. He was still arguably the league's best player, but due to his team's failure to win it all, several common narratives and stigmas began to tie themselves to Jordan. One of the narratives was that great scorers don't win championships, team players do. At that time in NBA history, a leading scorer and a player leading his team to a championship wasn't something that often went hand in hand. In the 60s, Wilt Chamberlain did all the scoring, but Bill Russell won the championships. In the 80s, Jordan was setting scoring records, while facilitators like Magic and Bird were acquiring all the rings. One analyst leading up to the NBA Finals even went as far as saying Jordan was just a great individual player in a team sport. The 2 best players in the league, with 2 very different narratives concerning their playoff careers. For all basketball fans who were alive at the time, they'll remember that this was one of the most hyped NBA matchups the league had ever seen.
This is the NBA on NBC. the 1991 NBA Finals. Today, Game 1 between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Chicago Bulls.
Game 1 underway, and it's a close, high-energy physical game throughout. All the stars came to play. Jordan, as usual, is having a great solo performance, putting up a stat line of 36, 12, and 8, while Magic secures a triple-double and one of many of his career. MJ was on fire down the stretch, and seemed as if he was finally ready to seize the moment on the game's biggest stage. Down to the final plays, less than 20 seconds left, and Magic finds an open Sam Perkins for a 3, which puts the Lakers up by 1 point. On the other end of the floor, Jordan tries to do it himself, drives to the basket, and is met by a crowd of Lakers before it's knocked out of bounds. Still Bulls possession. Game on the line, inbounds pass goes to Jordan. He goes for the win, and it's in and out. The Lakers shoot free throws on the other end, and the game is sealed. With the win, the Lakers had stolen home court advantage from the Bulls and seemed poised to win another championship. At this moment, and for the next few days, several narratives seemed affirmed. Magic's unselfish, facilitating style of play was what won the game and set the tone for the series, while Jordan's hero ball translated into losing once again. It was the same formula and result we had been used to, and it didn't appear as if anything was going to change. Game 2 begins, and for a while, it's another close one. Jordan starts the contest looking to be more of a facilitator. By halftime, it's only a 5-point game, and Jordan hasn't asserted himself much offensively. And then, the third quarter begins. MJ became extremely aggressive offensively, and to simply say that he caught fire would be a massive understatement. He couldn't miss anything, and as a result, the game started turning into a blowout. The Chicago crowd was electric. We were witnessing the first time Jordan had ever taken over an NBA Finals. As Jordan continued his onslaught, you could feel the momentum of the series shifting. Only minutes left in the fourth quarter, Bulls are up by 24 points. Jordan has made 12 straight field goals without a miss. And then, this iconic moment takes place.
To Livingston, Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. That's 13 consecutive field goals.
This wasn't just a crazy, unnecessarily difficult layup. It was Jordan's 13th straight made field goal on the NBA's biggest stage, which was the final nail in the coffin against the Lakers, which were led by his only competition as the face of the league, Magic Johnson. It was almost as if Jordan was so hot that he felt as if he had to make his shot even more difficult just to challenge himself. The Lakers would never recover from this point, and the Bulls didn't lose a game again in the series. In this game, Jordan had 33 points, 13 assists, and 7 rebounds on a ridiculous 83% shooting. If I had to pick a moment where Jordan took the torch from Magic, it would be this moment. In this game, Jordan proved that you can win on a championship level as primarily a scorer, that you don't have to be a big man or a pass-first player in order to win championships. This was the series where Jordan went from simply being the best player in the game to the face of basketball. And if there was a moment or a single image that would symbolize that transition, it would be this one.
The best performance I ever witnessed part of was against Michael Jordan. And I never had a player to do this before. I think I had 57 in Atlanta. We go back to Chicago weeks later. And I remember Michael Jordan walks in our locker room before the game. We in suit and tie, haven't gotten dressed yet. He walks in our locker room and I'm like, what the hell is he doing? You know, so I'm thinking maybe going to the training room or something. So he walks by me, he walks by Kevin Willis, and he gets to Randy Whitman and he slaps him on behind and he said, lace him up, it's gonna be a long night. He turned and walked out. And I'm in shock. I'm like, did he just... And I didn't know what to say. I said, well, you tell that so-and-so Scottie Pippen, I'm gonna kick his ass. I didn't know what to say. He had 60. But you know, even though he had 60, it's the way he had it. You know, it was electric, man. I mean, it was incredible.
It was on April 16th, 1987, and was the second to last game of the NBA regular season. The Hawks were standing strong with the second seed in the East, and with a 56-24 record. On the other hand, the Bulls were sitting at the 7th seed, with a 500 record of 40-40. Some of the context that Dominique didn't mention is that at this point, Jordan was the hottest player in the entire league by far. Obviously, to step in the opposing team's locker room and tell them that it's going to be a long night, you have to have a lot of confidence, and Jordan had plenty of good reasons to be so confident. 4 nights earlier, MJ absolutely torched the Indiana Pacers, dropping 53 points on over 70% shooting from the field. The very next night, MJ destroyed the Milwaukee Bucks in their own building, as he poured in 50 points on 52% shooting. If MJ could get at least 50 points against Dominique and the Hawks, then it would be his 3rd straight game with at least 50, which would be the longest streak of his career up to that point. When the game began, no one was surprised as MJ came out absolutely scorching, as he hit 6 out of his first 7 shot attempts. Just as Dominique described, MJ was scoring his points in a variety of ways, as his mid-range artistry was completely on display. The Bulls got out to a big lead early with MJ leading the way, and Atlanta seemed helpless to stop him. MJ was almost completely carrying the offense. At one stretch, he scored 23 straight points for the Bulls, which was a franchise record. With his 38th point, he surpassed 3,000 total points on the season, joining Wilt Chamberlain as the only players to score at least 3,000 points in a season. To this very day, Chamberlain and Jordan are still the only players to ever do it. Towards the halfway point of the 3rd quarter, Jordan was scoring into the high 40s, and something that's worth noting is how exhausted MJ was in this contest. The only other time I can recall him being this weary in a game was during the famous flu game and during his final game with the Chicago Bulls. I think this just tells you how much he had to carry Chicago offensively at this point in his career. At the end of the 3rd quarter, the Bulls were up by 11 points and seemed as if they had total momentum on their side. But Atlanta was a smart and talented team, and they entered the 4th with a plan. They became extremely physical with MJ, trying to punish him whenever he attacked the basket. They were also winning the loose balls and the hustle plays, while Chicago was struggling to get a rebound. MJ did his best to hold off a Hawks surge, but with just under a minute left in the game, the two teams found themselves tied at 112. Despite the fact that Jordan gets the spotlight for this contest, it was actually the other star who originally told the story, who was the one who shined the brightest in the final minute. With 41 seconds left, Dominique hit this difficult jumper in the post, with MJ draped all over him. Now the Hawks had a 2-point lead. After the timeout, it was the Bulls' turn. MJ drove to the left side, trying to get past the double team, when he was hit as he was taking a jump shot. MJ hit both free throws, which not only tied the game, but also gave him a total of 61 points, which was the 3rd time he had eclipsed 60 in his NBA career. Now it was Atlanta's turn again. The ball found its way back to Dominique, and he picked up his dribble while MJ was blanketing him. Despite being forced into a highly contested 20-footer, Dominique still buried the jump shot, clutchly giving the lead back to the Hawks. With 11 seconds left, the ball was going back to Chicago as they trailed by just 2 points. MJ drove until he was triple-teamed, and forced up a shot that ended up being well short. Dominique then got the clutch rebound and was fouled with 2 seconds left in the game. He proceeded to miss the first free throw, but then made the second, extending the lead to 3 points. With only a 20-second timeout, the Bulls were unable to advance the ball and had to inbound it on the opposite end of the court. It all came down to one prayer of a shot from arguably the most clutch player in the history of the game. Jordan took the inbounds pass and heaved a game-tying 3 from 60 feet out, but it was just short, and the Atlanta Hawks escaped with a victory, with a final score of 116 to 113. On the night, MJ was MJ, as he finished with 61 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 steals on 22 of 38 shooting. On the other hand, Dominique was the player who closed out the game with his clutch performance, as he had 34 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists on 10 of 21 shooting. To be honest, I really appreciate the humility of Wilkins while telling the story, because although MJ had the historic record-setting performance, Dominique was the true hero of the evening, as he iced the game despite the tremendous defense from MJ.
When Jordan had retired from the Bulls at the end of the 1998 NBA season, Jordan claimed he was 99.9% sure he would never play in the NBA again. As we all know, that 0.1% chance prevailed, and Jordan returned to the game he loved. Jordan's passion for the game was seen immediately upon his return, as he announced that all of his earnings from these upcoming seasons with Washington he would be donating to disaster relief funds for the 9/11 attacks in New York. After being completely apart from competitive basketball for 3 full seasons, Jordan was returning as a 38-year-old who was trying to get back into basketball shape. The comeback had plenty of physical obstacles as well. Jordan was heading into his return dealing with tendinitis in his wrist and in both of his knees. During a pickup game that offseason, Ron Artest had broke 2 of Jordan's ribs while playing physical defense on MJ. Jordan would also go on to have fluid drained from his knees multiple times throughout that year. Michael Jordan was joining a Wizards team who had finished the previous season with the 3rd worst record in the entire NBA at 19-63, despite the fact that they were playing in a much weaker Eastern Conference. They also had the 2nd worst defense in the league in terms of opponents' points per game. They weren't just a lottery team, the Wizards were coming off of their worst season in franchise history. The deck was stacked against him, and Jordan and the Wizards' 0-1-0-2 season got off to a slow start at 2-9, but they began to figure things out and went on a 9-game winning streak to improve their record to 14-12. Just 2 games later, Jordan had his worst performance of his return, shooting 2 for 10 from the field, finishing with only 6 points and losing by 27 points to the Indiana Pacers. Jordan was ice cold that entire game, and due to that, Michael's coach Doug Collins played Jordan in a reduced role, finishing the performance with only 25 minutes played. Jordan's 6-point game meant that his all-time great streak of 866 games with at least 10 points had come to an end. This poor performance and reduced minutes led Jordan to question his coach's faith in his abilities.
You know, that bus is lonely as a coach when you're sitting there after you've got your head handed to you. So I was sitting on the bus, and actually Michael had hired me. He was the part owner and president GM, hired me to be the coach, and then he came back to play. I'll never forget this moment ever as a coach. This to me was greatness. He got on the bus and he said, "Scoot over." And he looked at me and he said, "Do you think I can still play?" And I said, "Absolutely. That's why I'm here, to be here to help you." He said, "You know, to be my coach, you have to believe in me and believe I can still play." And I said, "Michael, I believe in you." We play the New Jersey Nets the next night. And Michael scores the first 3 times he has the ball. Byron Scott takes a timeout. And Michael comes over and he says, "I want the ball right there the rest of the game, and don't take me out till I tell you." And so that's fine by me. So with 2 minutes to go in the game, he gives me the sign like, "That's enough." I take him out of the game. He walks over to the bench. I said, "Michael, what happened tonight?" He said, "Well, the guy who was guarding me told me his back was hurting. Don't ever tell me you got a problem." He said, I'll make you pay for that." 51 points later. 51 points at age 41. He came back the next game with 46. And he looked at me and he said, "I told you I could still play."
Jordan responded in the following game the way a champion responds. He proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that he could still play in this league. Jordan was torching the Charlotte Hornets, playing like a man possessed. He scored 51 points on 55% shooting, adding 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. Jordan continued his dominance into the following game, scoring an efficient 45 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists on an extremely talented New Jersey Nets team that went on to the NBA Finals that season. Less than a month later, he had another back-to-back 40-point games, including a game-winning buzzer beater over the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Wizards started the season with a 26-21 record, and on the 47th game, Jordan collided with a teammate and tore his meniscus. He tried to play through the pain and on reduced minutes, but after another 14 games, he had arthroscopic knee surgery to repair the knee, and his season was over. Before Jordan's injury occurred, Jordan was averaging 25.1 points per game, 6.2 assists, 5.3 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game. It's unfortunate that we didn't get to see a healthy Jordan make it through the season.
because the reality was he was getting better as the season progressed and as he got back into basketball shape. In his last 20 games leading up to his injury, Jordan was averaging 27.5 points per game, 6.4 assists, 5.2 rebounds, and 1.3 steals per game on 44% shooting. In his last 10 games leading up to the injury, Jordan was averaging 29.7 points, 6.6 assists, 6.1 rebounds, 1.2 steals on 47% shooting. Also before Jordan's injury, the Wizards were on a 47-win pace and were well in the playoff hunt. Up to that point, no team in NBA history had ever been a sub-20 win team and gone on to have a winning record the following season. Jordan had the Wizards well on their way up until the meniscus happened. Something else to consider is that the Wizards' second option, Richard Hamilton, missed 5 weeks of their 26-21 stretch due to Hamilton's groin injury. After Hamilton healed and returned to the floor, the Wizards went on a remarkable 15-1 streak while they had both Jordan and Hamilton healthy on the floor. When you add all of this up, you begin to realize that not only did Jordan take one of the worst teams in the league and make them competitive, but had it not been for his knee injury, the Wizards would have had a legitimate shot at the first seed in the Eastern Conference. Not only was MJ getting better offensively as the season went on, but his defensive impact was getting better as well. Remember how the 2001 Wizards had the second worst defense in the league in terms of opponents' points per game? Jordan was the Wizards' only significant addition to their 2002 season, and at the time the knee injury had occurred, he had improved the Wizards to the 6th best defense in opponents' points per game, allowing only 92.2 points. In Jordan's last 35 games leading up to the injury, the Wizards were allowing only 90 points per game, on pace to have them ranked 3rd overall defensively in the entire NBA. In the 15-1 stretch that Jordan and Hamilton were both actually healthy and on the floor together, the Wizards were allowing just 86.3 points per game, which was by far the best defense in the entire league. The Miami Heat finished as the number 1 defense that season, allowing a higher 88.7 points per game. If Jordan and Hamilton had been able to remain healthy for the duration of the 2002 season, they may have finished with the best defense in the entire NBA. Again, with Jordan being the only major addition, the Wizards went from the second worst defense in the league to one of the best the NBA had to offer. That's the effect a 38-year-old Michael Jordan had on a lottery team. In the 1980s, the NBA was very, very different. The game was much more physical, and a lot of the plays that are now called technical and flagrant fouls were just routine plays back then. The culture amongst the players was also incredibly different. Trash talking was at its peak, and players from different teams legitimately hated each other. Players were not going on cruise ships together or would ever be caught dead on a banana boat together. The off-season focus was on destroying one another and definitely not scheming to join forces. The competition was incredibly fierce, and there was no shortage of both personal and team rivalries. One of the most iconic teams of the 80s were the Detroit Pistons. The 1980s were physical days of basketball, but the Pistons took that to another level entirely. The squad was full of strong characters, guys like Dennis Rodman, the tenacious and scrappy defender, a wild card who played with hustle and heart unmet by his peers, Rick Mahorn, the enforcer, who you definitely did not want to aggravate, Bill Laimbeer, the savage big man who seemed to enjoy being hated more than anything else and was always seemingly involved in the middle of every fight. They were led by none other than Isaiah Thomas, the General, a quick 6'1" point guard with a bigger-than-life smile off the court, but a cold-blooded killer on it. He was a driven leader with the clutch gene and had the courage to stand up to anyone. Together, they were a group notorious for their swagger, attitude, and extremely aggressive defense, which is putting it lightly. The squad's motto became domination by intimidation, and they certainly lived up to it. It was as if any given night you could turn on the television and see the Pistons players in a full-fledged brawl, and no one would be surprised. Their reputation transcended sports, as the team was coined the Raiders of the NBA due to their bad boy image and their aggressive attitudes. The players and fans embraced the comparison, as did the Oakland Raiders organization, going as far as sending official Raiders memorabilia to the Pistons players and coaches. The numbers spoke for themselves though. The 80s Pistons were one of the elite defensive units in the league year in and year out. Meanwhile, the young and upcoming Chicago Bulls were led by Michael Air Jordan. You know this guy. Even in his younger years before all the championships, he wasn't just an NBA superstar, he was a rock star, an American icon. He already earned the respect of other stars around the league, but as far as the Pistons, they seemed to be particularly repulsed by Jordan's flair. In the 1987 season, Jordan showed the Pistons what he was capable of, dropping 61 points in an absolutely dominant effort, leading the Bulls to a 125-120 overtime victory. Just 1 year later, on an Easter Sunday in front of a nationally televised audience, Jordan embarrassed the Pistons again, this time dropping 59 points in a 112-110 victory. This infuriated Pistons head coach Chuck Daly, who then promised after the game to never allow Jordan to torch them again. Later that season, Chuck would have the opportunity to uphold his promise. The two teams met in the 1988 Eastern Conference semifinals. The Pistons had just finished with the second best record in the Eastern Conference. Jordan was coming off of an MVP and Defensive Player of the Year season. Despite Michael's best efforts, Chicago was no match for Detroit in a 7-game series, with Detroit winning the series comfortably 4-1. The following year, when the 1989 playoffs began, Jordan had his sights set on revenge. This time, the two teams met in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Bulls were able to win one of the first 2 games in Detroit, and then when the series returned to Chicago, it appeared as if nothing was going to stop Michael Jordan. Then, with the ball in his hands for the final moments, Jordan did what Jordan does. With Chicago now leading the series 2-1, Isaiah Thomas was left restless that evening, trying to figure out how to stop Jordan. Isaiah called his teammate and co-captain, Joe Dumars, and that evening they were up until the middle of the night, contemplating, planning, and scheming. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Isaiah calls the coaching staff with one clear message: I figured out what we need to do to stop Michael Jordan. And in that moment, the Jordan rules were born. The Pistons then approached the next game with a whole new level of ferocity and intensity, and the results were evident. Information began to leak to the press of the Jordan rules, but then when asked about the rules, the Pistons sarcastically pretended as if they didn't exist. The Jordan rules had multiple components, but few were essential. Rule number 1. Force Michael into traffic. If Jordan was on the strong side of the court, force him towards the middle and collapse the defense upon him. If Jordan was on the middle of the floor, force him to the left where the help defender is waiting to meet him. Rule number 2. Make someone else beat you. Bill Laimbeer was quoted to say, "We don't worry about Pippen. As far as we're concerned, they're Jordan and the Jordanaires." The Pistons were constantly throwing multiple defenders at MJ and showed little respect for the other Bulls players on the floor, but they believed if Jordan wasn't going to beat them, then the Bulls definitely wouldn't. Rule number 3. Make Jordan work harder. The Pistons began to attack the Bulls offensively with whichever player Michael was guarding. The concept was that with Jordan using so much energy on the defensive end, there was little energy left over for him on the offensive end. And rule number 4, punish Jordan. The Pistons would no longer allow any easy baskets to Michael. When Jordan got to the paint, they put him on his butt. That was the rule, and they did it over and over again. The formula worked, and the Bulls would not win another game in the series. Fast forward to the month of June, and the Detroit Pistons were NBA champions, sweeping the Los Angeles Lakers 4-0. The 1989 Pistons were being considered one of the greatest defenses in NBA history, but as usual, they weren't without their fair share of criticism. Even though the team was made up of undeniable winners, the stigma of a dirty team was still very present. The Bulls-Pistons rivalry was just getting warmed up. In the 1990 NBA playoffs, the Bulls and Pistons met again in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was an epic series with the Jordan rules in full force. Jordan was again being targeted and taking an overwhelming amount of physical abuse, but he was also getting his own. The progression and maturation of the Bulls team was clearly seen as they forced a Game 7 in Detroit, but Chicago still wasn't ready to dethrone the Pistons and lost in the deciding game eliminated from the playoffs for the third straight year at the hand of the Pistons. The Pistons went on to win their second straight NBA championship. Michael Jordan was now hell-bent on revenge and spent the offseason in the gym growing stronger and preparing himself for the physical task of facing the Detroit Pistons once again. Jordan's supporting cast also had another offseason of maturation and growing as a better ball club. Another meeting in this rivalry was inevitable, and the two teams were set to square off again in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Bulls and their leader were stronger, faster, and just an overall better team than the Pistons. The age and wear and tear was beginning to show for the Detroit players, while Chicago players were all seemingly reaching their athletic peaks. It wasn't much of a series, but more of a statement. The Bulls dominated the Detroit Pistons and were on the verge of winning their fourth game of the series to complete the sweep over Detroit. The score was a blowout in favor of Chicago, and in the final minutes of the last game of the series, Isaiah Thomas made one of the biggest decisions of his basketball career. The Detroit players had a brief discussion while on the bench of those last moments, and agreed that together they would head straight to the locker room before the final buzzer had even sounded. Their reign was coming to an end on their terms. With 7.9 seconds left, the Detroit Pistons left their bench, walking to the locker room while awkwardly passing by the Bulls bench, refusing to shake the victors' hands or even make eye contact with them. This was a huge slap in the face to Chicago for refusing to shake hands, which is customary for teams at the end of a playoff series. It was also a black eye for the image of the league. The respect level around the league for the Detroit Pistons had hit an all-time low. Meanwhile, the Bulls were moving on to face Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals. The Bulls went on to win the series in commanding fashion 4-1. Michael Jordan was now an NBA champion and on top of the basketball world. Summer of 1991, just days after the NBA Finals had come to a close, the official selection committee for the USA's Olympic basketball team were making their selections as to which NBA players would be representing their country for the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona. This was a huge deal. It was the first time in history that NBA players would be representing the USA in the Summer Olympics. The timing could not have possibly been any worse for Isaiah Thomas. The committee selected Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Scottie Pippen, Clyde Drexler, Charles Barkley, David Robinson, Chris Mullin, Patrick Ewing, Karl Malone, John Stockton, and the college phenom Christian Laettner. This team went on to be famously known as the Dream Team, arguably the greatest basketball team ever assembled. Missing from the roster was future Hall of Fame point guard and captain of the recent two-time champion Pistons, Isaiah Thomas. If talent alone was the determining factor in the selection process, then leaving Isaiah off the team seemed like an obviously gigantic mistake. Oddly enough, the committee had selected Detroit Pistons head coach Chuck Daly to lead the Dream Team in the Olympics. Rumors began to swirl that Michael Jordan was in fact responsible for Isaiah being left off the team. Obviously, Michael did not like Isaiah. The Jordan rules and the end of the 1991 series was something Michael had fresh in his memory. It was believed that Michael gave the committee an ultimatum, that he would not be joining the Dream Team if Isaiah Thomas was on it. On numerous occasions, Michael has denied such allegations, but in a book released in 2012 by author and basketball writer Jack McCallum, he quotes Jordan to say, "Rod, I don't want to play if Isaiah Thomas is on the team," to USA Selection Committee member Rod Thorne. Jordan has continued to deny those claims. Several players of the USA Dream Team have since said that they also did not want Isaiah on the team. Magic Johnson, a longtime friend of Isaiah, even said in his book, nobody on that team wanted to play with him. So maybe the collective voice of the players led the committee to leave Isaiah off the team, or maybe the committee themselves simply didn't want him on the team. But it is plausible that Michael Jordan's supposed ultimatum was the swaying factor in the selection process. We may never know for sure. What we do know for sure is that the 1992 Dream Team is one of the greatest teams of all time. The Jordan era continued for many years after, and that era's Detroit Pistons were never again serious title contenders, with Isaiah Thomas's career coming to a somewhat bitter end in what was otherwise known as a legendary career.
LeBron is universally respected and revered. MJ was feared. You know the difference.
The statute of limitations up. I was terrified out there.
Were you really?
Yeah.
You scared of MJ?
Yeah.
For how long? Right when you took the floor?
No, the whole game.
The one thing that I think that he was unlike any other player I've ever played against is that there was a real fear playing against him. Like people, I've never seen like the league be kind of fearful of a player.
Kobe, not saying that you had to switch it up, but I didn't have that fear.
Yeah.
You know, Mike would have, you know, you better bring your game.
Oh, I mean, we was just all scared of Jordan. So I mean, that you know, when you show me against him, yeah, I get a little hot. His regular season average against the Pistons was 37.5.
Good grief.
And then some nights he would get hot, Q.
People were afraid of him. We were his teammates and we were afraid of him. And there was just fear.
Catch the ball when I throw it to you. I just threw it to you.
I'm tackling an interesting topic that has more to do with the psychological side of basketball and less about the stats and the X's and O's. The quote, fear of Michael Jordan. You hear players from his era talk about it, you hear his fans brag about it, and you hear the NBA media preach about it. But what exactly is behind it? Why do so many people claim that they feared Michael Jordan as if he was going to cause them some sort of physical harm? After all he truly was just a basketball player. Well, I think the explanation involves a lot of surrounding context, but at the end of the day, the explanation isn't all that hard to understand once you understand that context. I've seen many younger fans on social media laugh at the idea that Jordan was feared. After all, several players stood up to him. For one, Reggie Miller fought him, Robert Parrish threatened him, and you could even argue that the Pistons bullied him. Michael Jordan was not the most scary player in the sense that he would physically hurt you. If that was the case, then players like Ron Artest or Rick Mahorn would have all the stories about players fearing them. But you never hear that. In terms of his opponents, Michael was feared because of how he played when he was angry. There's a term in basketball that a mad player is a bad player, and this is usually a true statement, because when a player is mad, he's more prone to play recklessly and in a forceful manner. That will often result in playing with an emotional approach rather than a practical one. An angry player is more likely to ignore his training and force his will on the court rather than responding to the opposition as is presented to him. This mad approach will usually result in more turnovers, more personal fouls, more technical fouls, and more missed shots. But for some reason, Michael Jordan was the exception to this rule. Not only was Michael not affected negatively during his anger, but it seemed to have the complete opposite effect, as he often appeared completely unstoppable when he was triggered or challenged. The examples of such are basically endless. When Jeff Van Gundy called Jordan a con man, MJ responded by dropping 51 points on his Knicks. When Reggie Miller started trash-talking MJ, he dropped 40 points in the second half while shutting down Miller defensively. When Kevin Garnett got in his ear, MJ lit him up in the fourth quarter. When Magic Johnson told him that he better turn into Air Jordan if they were going to win that USA scrimmage, MJ completely took over. When he was eliminated by the Orlando Magic in 1995, and Nick Anderson said that 45 isn't 23, MJ came back the next season and swept them. When the media said that Clyde Drexler was the better three-point shooter, Michael Jordan broke three-point records against Clyde Drexler. When the league selected Karl Malone as the MVP over him, MJ responded by hitting the game-winning shot to defeat Karl Malone. When Dikembe Mutombo said that Jordan couldn't dunk on him, he proceeded to do just that. When someone said he couldn't dunk on someone bigger than Stockton, he proceeded to do just that. I could go on, but you get the point. Michael Jordan almost always got the one-up on his opponents. By responding with consistent excellence, he built up an intimidating reputation that he's one that should never be challenged ever. And that's where the fear comes in. If you're someone who thinks you're familiar with Michael Jordan's career, then consider this. When was a time where someone challenged Jordan and MJ did not get the last laugh? I promise that you can't name many, if any.
If Jordan didn't get the last laugh in half of the examples that I mentioned, then everything changes. As the saying goes, if you can make God bleed, then people will cease to believe in him. Now, I'm not trying to equate Jordan to God like Larry Bird once did, but what I'm doing is making the point that someone's perceived fear and reverence only goes as far as their consistent actions. Back then, angering Jordan meant that you were responsible for your team losing. It meant that you were getting destroyed defensively, and maybe the person backing you up is now seeing an opportunity to take some of your minutes. Angering Jordan meant that you were likely to be embarrassed in front of thousands, if not millions of people. That is fear-inducing for an NBA player. The fear was not that MJ would crush you physically, but it's that he would crush you mentally. But don't just take it from me, take it from these NBA legends, who learned this lesson the hard way and decided that they would never trash talk Jordan ever again, due to their fear of the consequences.
Did you ever do it again?
Never to Michael Jordan.
Never talk shit to Mike ever again in life.
Well, obviously, I didn't say much to MJ the rest of the night.
That's
right. He make a shot, you say, good shot, Mike. You don't talk trash to him so he can go off for 60. You try to kill him with kindness. You don't try to talk trash to him.